Hi, everyone. Good morning to everyone tuning in live here on the East Coast of the U.S. And good day to everyone, regardless of where you're tuning in around the world. Really appreciate you taking a few minutes to join in this really interesting conversation we have here today. My name is Josh Epstein. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Aras. It's my pleasure to be moderating this panel discussion today. This is a continuation of a series that we call Pulling the Digital Thread, where we explore trending topics and technologies that are shaping digital engineering, digital manufacturing, product lifecycle management, and the broader digital enterprise, all from this perspective of a connected data and information that comprises the modern notion of a digital thread. So really excited to have this great panel today. Before we get going, just some housekeeping. So we're actually streaming on a delay today, just to make sure we have good audio quality. So we won't be answering questions live, but please do participate in the discussion online on LinkedIn. You can tag your conversations, your comments or questions with hashtag pulling the digital thread in your posts, and we'll feel free to comment, and I'll ask, hopefully all of our panelists will also jump on and be able to comment as well. So regardless of when you watch this, search for hashtag pulling the digital thread, and you should see the conversation associated with this chat. So with that, let's dig in. So I am pleased to have four excellent panelists today, some of the most influential thinkers on PLM and digital thread and compliance. We've got Marcellus Menges, Louis Hendriks, David Segal, and Paweł Chądzyński. So we'll do just quick intros. We'll start with Marcellus first. So Marcellus is a Vice President for R&D at SICK Sensor Intelligence, where he's responsible for digital toolchain technologies for SICK's global operations. He's a veteran of PLM, having worked in automotive industry prior to joining SICK, and he studied under Dr. Martin Agner, who, for those of you who don't know, is one of the preeminent thinkers and scholars around PLM. And Marcellus's research focused on model-based service engineering for cyber-physical products. So Marcellus, maybe kick us off with just a brief introduction of SICK and really how you think about the subject of compliance and digital thread.
So thanks, Josh, for the introduction, and have the pleasure to be here. So let me tell a little bit about SICK and compliances. So as SICK Sensor Intelligence, we are producing and innovating sensors, and with this we are working really on the interface between the virtual and the real world. And what we are doing is we are handling data. So the sensor SICK is providing is not only a product, a physical product, we also provide data, and a sensor can be a high-tech computer because we give value data, so analytical data. And with this, we are hitting nearly each field where compliances are stepping in. We are operating globally, and we have also different standards, different compliance regulations in each country. And for us, it is very important to say, okay, we want to scale it globally. So if we have a regulation which is valid in the US and Europe, it maybe cannot be valid in Asia. And this means for us, we will not be compliant in Asia for that, because for us is important to make it as smart as possible to drive our business. And what we see at the moment is that a lot of regulation, especially regarding our software, is popping in. And for this, the digital thread is very important for us, because there are many changes. Some changes have to be done on the product level, some changes have to be done in our processes, some changes have to be done on certificates. We have to add information to our thread to handle these regulations. And important for us is that everything is interlinked, because we need strong analytics in future if something is popping in, something is changing, that we know what has to be changed. The product, some products also in the field, some new designs, is it process-driven regulation? And as mentioned, we want to do it smart. And this is where we see that data is the most important thing that we have in future. It has to be interlinked. And with this, we see that we can overcome this tsunami of regulations which are popping in the future. And I'm really looking forward now for this discussion, have a look on your views and discuss this topic, and hope that we together can master this challenge.
Absolutely. So thanks for being here, Marcellus. Louis, let's turn to you. So you're the founder and CEO for Global Value Web. Global Value Web provides data management consulting and strategies for companies in heavily regulated industries, including healthcare, life sciences, chemical, and energy. Could you maybe give us a little broader introduction of Global Value Web and talk a little bit about how you consult with clients on data strategies for more efficiently managing this tsunami of regulation?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think where we come from, it's also in the name Global Value Web. We focus on the value chains of our customers, basically from whatever raw material that they have through products that they create for their clients. So we are always focused on the primary process of our clients to the products that they produce as such. And well, as every PLM person knows, the data is not so well connected in many companies, and it is not flowing as we would like to see it flowing in this Industry 4.0, this Pharma 4.0 type of environments. So we've been working the data for our clients now for more than 15 years, in the time that it was not a hype as such. If you look at an organization, it was really happening on the shop floor on how you go, let's say the life sciences, from a first test on molecule in research, how you evolve that molecule into a drug product, to many years of drug product development, and then you get the authorization and you bring it to market, you bring it to so many different markets in so many different regulatory environments. What our clients are seeking for is that data, instead that it goes over all kinds of thresholds, it becomes one digital thread. So from the first test on molecule to every batch that went to patients in the end, wherever you pull the data, something goes wrong in manufacturing, something goes wrong with a patient or something, that you can tie it back all the way to its origin as such. I think it's more than a consulting task. It's like an operational execution task. Data is all around us and requires simply a lot of work to get it right in detail. So I think that's what we help our clients with, to get the data right in detail across the entire value chain, basically helping them to create the digital threads.
Excellent. No, I'm sure we'll talk about the world of data and how that's evolved as well in the past several years, and how it relates to the topic. So thank you for being here, Louis.
Thank you, Josh.
David.
Yes.
David Segal is the Global Business Head for Digital Thread and Connected Digital Enterprise at TCS, Tata Consulting Services. He's a frequent speaker at industry events and a PLM veteran in his own right, with having spent time at PTC and Dassault before joining the world of consulting. So David, tell us about how TCS thinks about compliance within the context of digital thread.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me here. So certainly for regulated industry, compliance is the key. From Tata Consultancy Services perspective, we're actually the second largest PLM deployment and implementation service worldwide, and we support. It's a large business that we need to conduct and succeed, where multiple systems, multiple applications come together and actually need to work in the particular customer context. So we're building digital threads, multiple digital threads. In the context of customer business processes. And for regulated industry, one of the key business processes is the compliance, from the material compliance, regulatory compliance, risk assessment, to the submission to the regulatory bodies. So certainly we utilize relevant commercial off-the-shelf technologies like Aras Innovator and the other systems and tools, and make them work for the particular customer requirement. Our key effort right now is to apply automation and artificial intelligence components, particularly for the risk assessment requirement, decomposition, and actually build knowledge graphs across multiple systems, connect multifunctional different data sources into one knowledge graph when this risk assessment and compliance measures could be automated. And this is, we see that some of the platforms today in the marketplace, the more supporting this goal, some of the less. So as the consultancy and services organization, we are there for our customers to make it work.
Excellent. Well, I know we'll probably touch on AI again during the conversation. So Paweł, let's finish with you and we'll get going here. But so Paweł is the Senior Director of Product Marketing for Aras. He sits down the hall from me and is one of my go-to resources for understanding digital thread and BSc and systems engineering. So he's a true veteran of the digital engineering space with an extensive background in PLM and electronic systems design. He is Aras internal expert on systems thinking and MBSE, on supply chain, and on the subject of requirements planning. So Paweł, let's review a little bit differently. Let me ask, how has the definition of digital thread changed throughout your career? And maybe how does that relate to how the focus on compliance has maybe changed in the industry?
Sure. So thanks to all for joining and welcome to the participants. And a great question, Josh, because it all starts or is enabled by a digital thread, as we know it well. So how has digital thread changed during my career? Well, since you asked, for me, it goes back to the 1970s, where I was introduced to the world of printed circuit boards, while the industry was taking the first baby steps in creating CAD tools for electronic designs. In those days, electronics was primarily designed on paper, including schematics and PCB layouts. And to shift to the CAD algorithms for component placement and interconnect routing, we had to create a data model for netlist, a named list of pins that need to be interconnected. That was very simple, right? But it was a data model. Over time, as clock rates kept accelerating in electronics, these interconnects became increasingly constrained with house speed requirements. And that's when sometimes in the 1990s, a simple list of pins became a complex data structure of fully traceable electronic relationships and behaviors, right? It wasn't just a connect, but also how to connect because of the behavior. These structures enabled simulation algorithms to explore electronic design space and CAD algorithms to guide component placement and create complex copper interconnects that met these constraints. And this is, in my mind, the first successful implementation of a digital thread that later pointed the way for multidisciplinary digital threads of today. That's where it started. These threads today may not only manage increasingly complex system relationships between design elements, but also track the interdisciplinary collaboration between various teams, sustainability, compliance, and lifecycle of the product. Most importantly, and this is very critical, unlike the electronics netlist of yesterday, today's digital threads allow to generate views in context, regardless of the overall complexity of relationships and behaviors that manage them, right? Complex digital thread, but I need to see what I need to see to do my job, the context. They also provide a mechanism for tracking the life cycle of the relationships. Now, this is something that is often kind of glossed over. It's not only that the product has a life cycle, but the relationships have a life cycle, without which it would not be possible to generate those views in context. So yes, the concept of digital thread has evolved tremendously over the last 50 years, even if the term itself came to existence only 10 years ago or so. I believe that's about the timing. Digital thread today is one of the critical values, if not the critical value, of PLM platforms, whose focus is shifting from BOM and mechanically-centric thinking to multi-domain systems-centric thinking that connects networks of manufacturers, partners, and suppliers. So there you have it. It's all started with electronics. way back then.
Excellent. Thanks, Paweł. Thanks for being here as well. So let's dive into the conversation. And obviously, I think we can see everyone on the panel comes from a different background, different perspective. And I love the term that Marcellus uses, this tsunami of regulation that is sort of kind of hitting the beach of many different industries. So it's true that it's really hard to generalize the compliance topic given the enormous spectrum of relevant regulation that's out there. And here's just some of them that kind of came to our minds as we were thinking about this. So the subject certainly spans ESG and sustainability, to health and safety, to data privacy and sovereignty, export control, and many more categories that I'm really just starting to learn about. So obviously the relevance to product design and product management is very industry and use case specific. But let's try to look at this from kind of a simplified lens. And so we'll kind of step through and ask each of the panelists to comment on these topics. We'll sort of start at the requirements planning phase, where we really ask the question of, what do we need to comply with? Then into design, where it's how do we comply? Then into the production process of are we actively complying? And then finally into reporting, how do we prove to the world that we are in fact in compliance? So with that as the structure, Paweł, let's start with you, given your background and requirements. So Rob McAvity, the CTO of Aras, uses the term requirements as a service to sort of talk about how we can be better about sharing requirements out to the design ecosystem. So how do leading organizations translate regulatory compliance documents and frameworks into actionable requirements that engineers can actually work with and actually incorporate into product design?
Sure. So yes, the tsunami of regulations versus requirements as a service, right? And let's call a spade a spade. Tsunami is bad, right? Service is good. So that's the context, I think, for this discussion. We cannot diminish the rate at which the new regulations are generated or where they are coming from. They're generated all the time and they're coming from everywhere. But we sure can make it easier to establish what they are and how they relate to what we do, right? Contextualize them to my job. So the magic words here are the cloud and the artificial intelligence. And that is exactly what Rob, as you mentioned, focused in his keynote at the recent Aras Conference. The cloud and the artificial intelligence. The cloud allows to connect all sources and repositories of regulation, no matter who created them. And it can do that in the background while presenting aggregated views as a single source by cloud-based services. So as a user, right, I no longer need to worry. I need to go there to check, or there and there and there. The service, the cloud-based service, can serve that to me. And it can do that in the background while presenting aggregated views as a single source. Of course, the cloud will not do that by itself just because services are in the cloud. It doesn't happen, but somebody has to monetize that SaaS opportunity for requirements or regulation searches, just like Octopart or IHS Market do for parts today very successfully. In fact, there are companies that do that for requirements as well, and Certivity is a good example of that. But it's more than that, in my opinion. When properly integrated with a cloud-based PLM-managed digital thread, that's a mouthful, but it is a cloud-based PLM-managed digital thread, the platform can instantly react to amended or new regulations, right? I don't need to seek that. The platform can tell me, watch it. Sort of the way we get notices about Windows updates, let's say, but in a context of what is impacted that matters to me. AI, in turn, can scan these regulation sources dynamically to determine what is new versus what has changed, big difference, and how that relates to what I'm doing right now. by automatically highlighting the impacted projects, products, or parts, whatever the focus may be. A dynamic impact analysis, if you will, right? In PLM, you can say, I want to change this. What does that mean to everything else? And that impact analysis can be served to me simply because something has changed. AI can also recognize quantitative goals buried in the regulatory text as written parameters, right? 5 inches, written, not defined as a parameter. That in turn, once you get there, will allow cloud-based PLM managed digital threads to aggregate individual values across all related elements within a product structure to constantly track degree of compliance. So, I don't need to push a button to find out 5 minutes later that something is not compliant, but I have this arrow, right, that turns from red to green as I'm proceeding in the design that tells me that I'm on the right vector. And as I pointed out before, because relationships within digital thread have their own life cycle, that aggregation can be done in very specific contexts of a date or a manufacturing facility or a variant imposed by supply chain issues in a geography, right? That compliance is not one for all. Again, it depends on the context. So AI-based processes on digital thread can do all of that much faster and much more accurately than humans. And and there are very good examples of that, why humans don't do it very well, because regulations change frequently, are document-based, complex, vary by region, country, methodology, and language. So interpreting all of that is difficult. It is difficult to keep up with the data, to date with changes of the existing regulations. When a new regulation is released that impacts my product, my PLM and other software systems struggle to react and flag the need for changes quickly enough, right?
Yeah, and I'm curious how some of the other participants think about that, keeping up with change, right? So how do you actually monitor the tsunami? And I think the goal of having a cloud-based PLM managed digital thread is clearly where Aras would like to see everyone go. But I think in the real world, maybe y'all could comment on how this actually works in practice. Marcellus, Louis, any thoughts here?
So yeah, in practice, I mean, to build up the digital thread, especially for requirements, is also a big challenge, because you will have, in most cases, you have a PLM system where you will have the requirements, but it is not the only system you have. You also have deep best-in-breed systems for requirements editing, and it is a difference if your product is heavily mechanical driven or if it is software driven, because also for compliance you do not know each single requirement, because this would not work. It would be overwhelming your process if you have thousands of requirements. And I believe it is the first challenge is, how do we get this view on a digital thread? We have to have all data in a digital way. We have to interlink it over the complete thread, but also for me the huge challenge is how deep do I have to dig in details? Because if I do it really on a detail level, it will kill my processes. If you especially have afterwards a design process, and you have the possibility to have all requirements, but you hand over thousands of requirements for one part. There's a designer, he has to design the parts, and you hand over, look, you have to fulfill this 500 requirements, he will be screwed. He will not know where to start and where not. And I believe this will be also in the future a big challenge. How do I get this digital requirements stored? How can I connect it also via different systems? And how can I really simplify it now? So maybe also of usage of AI, what are the now, or what are the important requirements for you? And delivers this as a service. So not only the requirement itself, but also in the context, this is now the requirements for this compliance, which you have to take care of. Or afterwards also check, did we solve it? Did you thought about it? Is it solved? And maybe support in future with some generic AIs to say, okay, look, there's a requirement changing, and we have a solution for that. We can give you or say, look, you can do it like that. You just have to check and say, yes, it's a solution. It's okay for me. So I believe this is the huge challenge, and the better we are in this early phase, the faster we will be also in the following processes.
Yeah, absolutely. Louis, how about in the pharmaceutical space? How do people go about understanding the shifting regulation and the impact to their production process?
Yeah, I think in the pharmaceutical domain, what's going on is that the regulatory authorities are really sort of leading the change on how this industry is actually going from document-centric to truly data-centric. In the ISO standard on health informatics, the whole world has come together on what should be the data structures that an FDA and an EMA and an MHRA want to see as such. And with the FDA having already created what they call a drug substance database, it set a clear milestone on the horizon that the industry has to prepare for. At the same time, a big part of the industry still lives with those documents as such. So the biggest question mark is how can you truly digitize data-centric a drug product? That building that data puzzle almost from that first test on molecule. And once you've done that first test on molecule, you just keep on doing more tests, right, to understand the viability of the drug product, of the molecule. And once it is there, you go in full drug product development mode as such. So during the life cycle, which is many years, you keep adding data to it. And in the old days, it would be stuck into certain stovepipe systems. There would then be a document generated. So many mandatory documents would be filed. But those documents that were generated, you see all those documents, they are the hands that touch the elephant, but nobody sees the elephant. Now we get in a world that we are weaving that data together, where you're building that digital thread, and maybe we in reality many digital threads, but they start to shape the digital form of that drug product. So in the end, what are the future processes that you need? You only need those processes that still need to add the missing pieces of data somewhere in the life cycle. So to go back to the AI that also Paweł was talking about, you can use the AI to check on completeness of all the data that's supposed to be in the drug product. And the missing data has to come from somewhere, somehow, right? Somebody's doing some tests, validating something, and generating additional data sets into the bigger data set of the drug product. What I'm talking about now still has to be made. I think that's exactly why a product like Aras, which truly has the potential to be a true data-centric data platform for products, has been proven already for many years. Yes, it comes from automotive and aerospace and what have you, but there's also enough companies that are using it now in the food sector, right? And with Red Bull now adopting it, okay, it's a drink, it's fine, but still it's a recipe, it's all kinds of combinations, and it has to go in many countries. So it's just bringing it a step closer to what is the data representation of a drug product. And exactly that journey on how we go from control by a process, which is reflected by all those documents, how we go to a world that is controlled by data. That's going on right now. And that is, I think, our big interest and support for the Aras platform.
Well, I appreciate that and the support for the Aras platform. I think in the way you've articulated it, though, it's clear that companies that are better able to manage the change in regulation and incorporate it are going to be inherently more competitive. So this can be a source of competitive advantage for those organizations that really get this right.
Yeah. Also, when you spoke about the change, right, and with AI, Paweł spoke about that, identify the change impact. But the change is now coming from the outside, from the regulatory world, which forces the industry to move as such. So it's a massive change for many companies, because every drug product that's already in the market has been filed in so many markets. There's a whole stack of documents that go with it. New drug products and what's already in the market is going to be it is already a very interesting journey, and the technology is needed to make the transformation easy and bring that speed what we are looking for.
Well, let's move the conversation sort of down the value chain and kind of shift to the design phase. And so, Marcellus, how do you think about incorporating compliance-related requirements into the actual product design process? And I think in particular, how do you think about it from a systems perspective, and consider whether, what the impact to electromechanical, to software, or even supply chain would need to best address compliance needs?
Yeah, so it is important, if I now have the requirements and go into my design phase, I see that we have several views which we have to take in, and that especially in this phase we have a very big digital thread and data model which we need to solve all these topics. Because if you look, we have on the one side we have a product model or product twin, and this should describe how the design should looks like, and there we have to secure that all requirements are met at the end. And here it is important, at least in our case at SIG Sensor Intelligence, that we have a cyber-physical product. So this means this can be compliances which belongs to material, sustainability compliances. It can be that it is it's more driven for electronics, PCB design. It can be that it is driven for software compliance, and software acts, data acts at the moment are the most discussed topics in standardization and compliance. And what we need here is really a full-blown product model where we have a cyber-physical bill of material, engineering bill of material. And not only this bill of material, this is also what Louis was telling us, you have a lot of other systems. It's not a value if you see, okay, there is an EBOM and there is a requirements fulfilled, and this is in this design, and this design then again is a CAD document. So what you have to do, okay, you have the document, but you have to open and search where exactly is it fulfilled. So this is very important that we get here a huge model and also information in place we need. The second thing is we are not the only company. So the second dimension is we are not working alone in our world. We have suppliers, we have customers, and there's also the challenge, how can we build up this digital thread taking in account the information they have. So we have to hand over requirements to them. They have to give back us the information. And there's also, if we have a digital thread, how can we build up this interoperability so that we also can match this information? Because if I would match the wrong values, I cannot really be sure if I'm compliant or not. And at the end, the more I don't get this view, I will end up in huge test loops and validation loops. And then also what we have in most cases, if I look at sustainability, we also have a process model. So if we design a product, automatically we define a lot of informations which are important for our production. Can it be automized, the production, or look at the carbon footprint? Yeah, I can, if I have a requirement on carbon footprint, I can react with a material, but I could also react with a better footprint of my production, or can react with a different technology. So as is also, how can we interlink this? Yeah? And this we have to take into account, and then also especially the later phases in the product lifecycle management. Yeah? So if I produce a sensor and send it to the field, it's done. So I cannot improve the carbon footprint in the production. It's done. But I have also to think, okay, what is the maintenance service I want to offer later? What are the maintenance cases? How can I recycle it? Maybe I can take back my parts and can reuse it. So we also there have to build up huge models and to think about this later cases. Because as mentioned, if it is designed, it's produced in the field, too late to so then I can react, but I cannot do it proactive. And this is where, for me, it's very important. This is product, process, and service model is interlinked with external, so we have to align it. And it is also very important for me that we can interlink it with the digital twins. So if I find asset in the field, I should be able to get data and bring it in a closed loop back to my development, because if something is changing, also it could be that at my customer side something is changing because of legal compliance, I have to react. And this would be very nice to see, okay, what is the sensor? What is the configuration? What is the usage of this? What was the planning model of it? Maybe I changed it already to a newer version. Is it fixed there? Is it not? And especially with software, this will get a huge drive, because in software, we have more and more to monitor, okay, what framework we are using. And because of cybersecurity, we have to react in future very fast. So we have to know, okay, I use this framework to solve this compliance requirement, but now it's not safe. So I have also to know not only what are my products which impact, so we have to know what are the assets which are impacted. And if I had a maintenance on that, and I change the configuration to the maintenance, I have to know, okay, how can I comply again with this asset in a safe?
Right.
Yeah. And this is where I see we have huge challenges. And this we can really, I believe, only solve in future with a huge digital thread, a real interlinked digital thread, which go really into details. And for that, this is also important, as mentioned, interfaces. Now, for me, I believe building up a digital thread in PLM, we are keen to do it if it is in our own company. But how do we interconnect with other companies? How do we interconnect with the planning phase to the operation phase? How do we interconnect also in systems? Yeah, if I have a wonderful digital thread system, but I'm not capable to build up an interface to a sub tool which I maybe need because it has some features I need to build up the thread. So these are the critical topics. And funny thing is, I see, especially in Europe, popping up that there again regulations are popping up. Yeah, like the administration asset share, which is maybe future valid for change notifications, so that you really standardize can communicate. And this is also a challenge, because this would mean I have to build up a standardized data model. And I have to change my data model also in the system, which not a lot of systems can. Aras, for God's sake, can do it as a benefit. And also these are standards where we see, okay, we have a lot of work to build up and to maintain how the digital thread is built up and use them over our processes. And one big challenge is also then, if this has to be changed, how to migrate and get in old data. Because you're changing, you're concentrating on new products, and something's popping up 5 years old product. Yeah, the data are not as digitized, and you will never migrate it, because at the end, our target is to get products as fast as possible into the market, and we will not migrate every data, because it may be coming change. Yeah, so these are the challenges. And for me, important is, if we look at the digital thread, we should not only look at compliance, because this is for me always the minimum we can use the digital thread, but we should also think about, okay, how can we add compliance and manage it in a way that we still can support business. So if a change is coming, it should not impact the time to market. It should not impact my development. We should do it smooth, and we should add another capabilities also on it to have also some business requirements solved.
I think it's you've raised just a lot of topics here that we can maybe pick apart a little bit. David, I'm curious, thoughts on this? So complex. How do you work with clients to actually sort through this complexity and just start on a journey towards getting control?
Sure. I'll try to be brief in my comment. So I agree with the previous speakers that the data representation is important, the change is constant, and digital thread should go over just compliance function. So typically, when company introduce a new product or new product family, whether it's a new pharmaceutical product with the new molecular or new med devices component, so they build the relationship They build this merger regulation dictionary with the country regulations, with the material regulations, multidisciplinary data. So in this case, if platform provides that capability of tracing life cycle of different relations, that's the benefit. That's very good. So that's already the save of effort and as much out of the box. That solution could be better. However, you have to take care of different checks and assessments. And speaking of the design, key function why we take that connectivity between physical designs and even model designs with the compliance data is to make assessments correctly. And this accuracy and fidelity of this assessment is the key subject, right? And if you can automate this assessment, or whether assessments to be done by materials, is the advantage as well. So, how platform provides that ability to automate this assessment is also a good question, right? So this is why companies create some automated assessment rule-based steps of different criteria for those compliance points against standards, against the dictionary, and make that assessment be correct. And then that's become a foundation, a baseline for any further GenAI or AI capability, because without that foundation, all the subjects would not be really relevant. So it's a journey, data in the center. Certainly, application capability of the platform is important, but the methodology, how you would structure this data, what's in your key value, how it's aligned with your business process, this is what determines this digital thread.
Yeah.
That's what determines that enterprise connection as the digital thread. That's
I think well said. Let's pull on the digital thread. Let's pull on the topic of data and shift to Louis. Obviously, your business is about data strategies for managing complex value chains. How do you work with clients on sort of starting the process of determining a data strategy that makes sense for them, and specifically thinking as we move from kind of design into actual production and ensuring that we stay in compliance? How do those data strategies support that effort?
Interesting question, Josh. Also in response to what Marcellus and David are talking about. The typical value chain or the globally extended value chain that you see in life sciences is really a collaboration of many companies ultimately building a drug product together. Marcellus, you spoke about collaboration where companies work together. And I think you need what I think Aras also is that collaborative platform. And the question is and that's why I'm always pushing the value chain concept, is that it's not a value chain, right? It doesn't exist. It's a complex network. It's a complex ecosystem. But everywhere there are sitting these nodes, and somewhere they work together. Sometimes they work together on this drug product. Sometimes the drug product follows a completely different flow through that extended ecosystem. And so it's impossible to make a data set for the entire thing or to automate almost everything. And I also want to relate to what you were saying, Marcellus. So on one hand, you follow the drug product, goes through it, but the drug product touches, let's say, laboratories, it touches equipment, it touches all kinds of elements, all in its journey. So how much those are digitized and whether they have their respective digital twin will also speed up or slow down the process. So I think in the digital transformation, there are really people looking at how to digitize all the assets, asset lifecycle management and what have you, and where does it communicate with wherever the drug product sits in the life cycle. If you outsource a part of the research to a contract researcher, or you outsource a part of the development to a contract developer, or you outsource the manufacturing to a contract manufacturer, you give them a piece and you expect some outcome back. But you're not going to prescribe how they are going to organize their asset lifecycle management and their part of the product thing, but you want to have the output come back and take it back into your digital twin, but that's the reflection of it. So I think to slice an elephant, if you will, into pieces, you have to bring it down to company level, to functional level, and see where all the connecting points are. As such, and I think we do that with PLM platform, finding those collaborative points and where things come together as such. I want to touch on two more things that were said. One was carbon footprint was also mentioned, the environmental impact as such. I didn't even realize up to 1.5 years back or so that pharmaceutical is actually one of extremely polluting industry as such. So we can research and develop drug products probably with a lesser impact by having better methods along the way. But what about all those drug products that are already in the market and they might have bad methods with environmental impact? Today I can hardly touch them because all the documents have been filed. Don't touch it. That's the mantra. But then you're not improving your environmental footprint. So I think when you not only digitize what is new, but that you also digitize what is old, you actually get the opportunity to clean up the mess that you made in the past and revisit the drug products that have the same efficacy, the same impact, but the environmental footprint would be lower. So I think the journey towards digitization is enormous, but once it is done, you can do so many additional environmental improvements that I think that is worthwhile the effort. And it's not enough spoken about yet, but it's a big value that is waiting behind the digital threat horizon.
Yeah. Paweł, you I know have done a lot of research on supply chain and kind of thinking about how we can think about these holistic systems. Maybe talk a little bit about kind of extending the digital thread into the supply chain and collecting data and kind of coordinating compliance. And obviously sustainability is a great use case, but it goes much beyond that as well. What are your thoughts?
Sure. So, extending digital thread, and we're kind of talking about compliance and requirements. Extending that type of digital thread to the supply chain has two different components, and one is the data itself, right? The way it was discussed here, but in compliance management, the process itself has to be documented so that it can be verified by outside authorities. So not only do you need to be able to trace the data, but also the process of how that data is being applied to figure out if you're compliant or not. And of course, if you're extending that to the supply chain, now you have the challenge of understanding what the issues are within the supply chain in the first place, your partners, right? It's not enough to tell them we need to do it this way or that way, because they may be facing a crisis, and if you're not about something, and if you're not aware of that, 2 months down the road, you're going to get hit with it without having any understanding of what happened. So extending digital thread, especially for compliance, to your supply chain network involves making a true partnership with them so that you can work together and inform each other, hey, I'm going to have a problem here, or a problem is being developing. Can you help me to fix it? Can we work together to address it? Can we find an alternate way of doing it while the crisis is being addressed? So that's what I consider a huge challenge. Not dealing with suppliers as suppliers. You were supposed to deliver this by that date at that cost. You didn't. That's the end of the relationship, right? But the true partnership where where you're aware of each other environments and issues. That's a big challenge for a digital thread.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it opens up all sorts of secondary compliance issues when you're sharing data, when you're kind of exposing IP, obviously, to each other. How do you do that in a secure way? How do you do that in a systematic way that supports the process? David, I'd like to sort of shift even to the last stage in the value chain that we talked about in reporting. So I know TCS has done a lot of research on sustainability reporting as part of your the Digital Twindex survey. Could you touch on that as well as take a step back and talk about the general challenge of reporting of regulatory compliance and beyond just sort of checkbox compliance? How are the best organizations out there really convincing their customers, convincing their markets to their commitment to sustainability or safety or whatever the most important topics are? I'm curious your perspective here.
Sure. Actually, that sustainability movement brought a lot of light and emphasis on the correct reporting. And the correct reporting, need for the correct reporting brought the need for the timely submission of the regulatory reports. And actually connecting previous subject on the supply chain. It's not just a submission of your regulatory data from your product, it's actually from your suppliers. And in some accurate manner when that supplier data come timely with the date of the submission. So having one platform as the data exchange would not be sufficient, right, for that. And this is typically how it happens today. They just throw the data over the file transfer, and that's it. They're losing the track of the accuracy and the relevancy of this data. So having a platform, have the ability that the platform would analyze that relevancy of the submission, that create automatic submission processes. And those automatic submission processes actually will be connected to the previous requirements from the different standards. And that all contributes to the right report builder or engine for the making those reports being timely, being relevant to the particular regulation. And let's not forget, the regulations are constantly changing. We'll take one country, it's constant change. If you take, for instance, European Union, multiple countries, they bring their updates for regulation. So to keep up with the overall change, you actually, I'm not aware about any automatic tool that actually making it. There are companies who are making their value proposition just by monitoring different changes. So capturing this, aligning with this reporting engine, can become a key function, which actually is TCS implement on top of Aras platform that enables that connectivity with suppliers, enable the ability to create those automatic checks. So that's one of those solutions that we offer to this regulated industry companies to address their time reporting.
Yeah, I'm very excited with our collaboration with TCS. Marcellus, I'm curious in your perspective. Thoughts on reporting and transparency in general.
It's a very important topic for me because if we have the right reportings and metrics in place, it supports also the end users of our systems, because this is something we should not underestimate. So we are talking about digital threads, about complex data models, process, but the end users which are designing, which has to handle these processes, they in the most cases are not able to see this huge complexity, and they should not, because they should concentrate on this. And I believe reporting is very important for this, because it can extract out of this massive set of data exactly what I need, and I can show me the relations, and I can give me the possibility to play very easy with this data. So if I feel that this, what happens with that, or also to get informations like, okay, if I look at my products, what's the actual footprint, what was it years ago, data and extracting also data I was not aware of it before, because it was not part of the standard, it was not point of interest. And with I believe with this analytics, it is very important to have it, and this dashboards and reports really to support this. And I believe this is also key, because at the end, we can automate a lot, but still people are key in the process. And this is exactly the interlinkage we need to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Louis, Paweł, any thoughts on the subject of reporting or transparency? It's obviously a hot topic out there right now.
Yes, like anything else, also the reporting is in a transformation as well. But if you look at the legacy in the industry, they still need to have the old documents and the old reports. So from whatever you have data centric, you have to have the ability to generate whatever is mandatory, and that will not go away until everything is transformed. So it will take a long time. And then at the same time, for the people that, let's say, you have a certain function, you need to have a certain contribution to the drug product, just any product that you're making. Marcellus, to take away the complexity, right? You need to give the people almost an app for his activity at that point in time to do certain things. And at that point in time, he needs to be reported the data that is relevant for the input for that person, so that he can do whatever he needs to do and create a perfect data output. What is reporting in all reality, right? Is taking data and put it in a structured way. So making a nice user interface in an app for somebody, because you have the data centric somewhere. It's the same logic. It's just that I'm not printing it on a piece of paper. And present it in a certain way. So I like to see reporting in that way, and that it has not only a purpose at the end of the value chain, but it has a continuous purpose anywhere in the value chain, if I may, for whatever the reason may be.
Yeah, no, it is a fascinating space, ever changing. We're doing a lot of research at Aras on the digital product passport and the ability to, actually sort of at any point in time scan a QR code and see the history or see the carbon footprint of your product. So it is with data, with the cloud comes new ideas for how to report and deliver transparency to our markets. So I've never thought that an hour discussion of compliance would go by so quickly, but it did. So I want to wrap things there to stay on time. Thank you all. Thanks for everyone who tuned in to listen. Thanks Marcellus, Louis, David, and Paweł for the great discussion, for your ongoing collaboration with Aras. And we encourage you and everyone else out there to keep the discussion going on LinkedIn. Again, use hashtag pulling the digital thread to find this discussion and related ones. Please share your opinion and let us know what you think. So thanks everyone for coming today, and look forward to having you join us in future editions of Pulling the Digital Thread. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.